So I'm going to make some commentary on proofs in general in this video, and specifically the difference between substitution and the transitive property and how those properties were applied in the various proofs that we've seen over the past few days. So this is pulled from the vertical angles proof. We looked at this, particularly in first period. I felt like we didn't really resolve the issue here. We had the substitution property applied in one proof, and then in a very similar situation, the transitive property was applied instead. And as best as I can tell, the reason we use the substitution property here is because in the vertical angles proof, these two sets of supplementary angles were identified as distinct lines in the proof. So in order to set these two things equal to each other, we must substitute the thing from statement 1 and the thing in statement 2 in order to make statement 3. This is slightly different than the proof we had on complementary congruent, or the congruent complements theorem. So here's what I'm pulling from here, the congruent complements theorem, as compared to the vertical angles theorem. Here in vertical angles, these two statements are distinct from one another, so substitution is called for. But here in the congruent complements theorem, these two statements are together of single conclusion drawn from the preceding statement. So the transitive property is applied, and the distinction is subtle but probably important. Transitive is if A equals B, and if A equals C, then B is equal to C. So here, the A is 90 degrees. B is the sum of these two angles, and C is the sum of these two angles. If A is equal to B, and A is also equal to C, then B is equal to C by the transitive property. And while you can make a very similar argument over here with the vertical angles, these two statements are distinct from one another because they are two conclusions drawn separately from the given information. So the substitution property is instead applied. This stuff equals 180. This stuff equals 180. So this stuff is equal to that stuff. This is not something I would lose any sleep over if I was you as a student, and I won't be grading too closely onto little details and subtleties like this one. Eventually, we're going to break out of the two-column proof and just start writing paragraph proofs, which I think are a bit more natural, a bit more intuitive. But in order to get the structure down, we need to practice with outlines like this.